Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot and a Pmdg beta tester. Pmdg have just released the last of the 777 ranges to come for Microsoft Flight Simulator and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, namely the 777-200LR. The LR, which stands for long range, is a variant of the 200 that first flew in 2005 and that was built to offer back then the greatest range possible with over 8,500 nautical mile range. This means airlines like Qatar, for example, are flying the aircraft from Auckland in New Zealand over to Doha, which is over 17 hours of flight time. Now, let's go over a couple of the differences between the 200LR and the other versions of the 777s. So the LR has a lot of things in common with the freighter and with the 300ER. Most namely, it has the rated wingtips that we see in the 777 freighter and the ER, which are a lot more aerodynamic than the wingtips that the 200ER series originally had. And basically those work in quite a similar way to the winglets that you saw on other aircraft, while maintaining quite a bit less drag. Now, the engine is also really worth mentioning. The 200LR only comes with a GE90 engine, and it is the GE90-110, which means the engine has 110,000 pounds of thrust available. To give you a little idea, the 200ER had the GE90-95, which had 95,000 pounds of thrust, and therefore quite a bit less than what the LR has available. This is of course because the LR with its extended tanks has a much higher maximum takeoff weight than the 200ER does in order to enable it to fly those very long-range flights. Now, the 200LR isn't the only news that we are gonna see today. We also have updates available for the rest of the 777 fleet, bringing it to version 116. Let's go ahead and have a quick look into the changelog for one of those aircraft in order to see what kind of stuff has been done. As always, you can access and download the aircraft through the Pmdg Operations Center, and in there you will also find the changelogs. For example, if we go down onto the freighter over here, then we can click on changelog over here, and you can see this is all the stuff that has been done for the 200LR release, respectively the updates for the rest of the aircraft. Obviously, this isn't exactly as long of an update as you've seen on some of the previous aircraft, because by now the 777 family is a rather refined product line, but nonetheless it's nice to see that they keep working on this stuff, and more will be coming in the future as well. The 200LR doesn't mark the end of the lifespan of the 777, much rather it just marks the completion of the fleet that we're going to get from Pmdg. Now, talking about the updates that are currently available, let's just go back into the 200LR down here and see the number of liveries as well. You will notice that we don't have as many liveries for the 200LR as are available for example, the 300 or the 200ER, which is simply because the 200LR is a rather niche aircraft in the real world. You can see there's only 2 real-world configurations available here with Emirates and Qatar Airways, and overall the airplane did not see as wide of a service and has meanwhile been retired from many airlines that used it previously. However, it does mark a great entry into the 777 fleet if you do want a passenger version and don't want to spend those $77 that the other fleets do cost. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's quickly talk about Marketplace as well. So there is a rather extensive update on this available in the Pmdg forum, which I'm going to link in the video description below, but for the time being, let's try and summarize what Robert explained in really great detail. Basically, when FS 2024 came out, Microsoft marketed the aircraft to be as, let's call it, as compatible as it would get. So basically saying, well, we do have all those 2020 aircraft, they'll stay compatible for 2024. That proved rather quickly, and now Pmdg has the trouble that they try to make the livery packs for FS 2020 available for 2024 as well, but basically Microsoft says, no, you can't do that without charging for them again, which Pmdg wants to avoid. So basically, with that in mind, Pmdg was assured a release of at least the 777 updates on the 17th of July 2025, and therefore announced that release in their forum, and for some strange reason Asobo just didn't do it and just didn't make them available. Now at this point they are trying to settle that in the background and trying to work with Asobo to get those updates out as quickly as possible, as well as to get to know when and how they can release the livery packs for FS 2024 for free, but Asobo basically said we don't have any ETA for a fix that would make this possible at the moment. Now, with all those 777s aside, let's take a moment to talk about the other Pmdg product lines, because that is obviously where development resources will be moving to next. So let's first talk about the 737 updates for FS 2024. And those are making significant progress at the moment, now that most of the workload on the 777 has fallen off. Now, much of the FS 2024 native retooling has been accomplished, and Pmdg are deep into the upgrades now. They will hopefully have an update of a movable cockpit door very soon to prove that things are working, but remember that the 737 is not just going to get a standard compatibility update to get them into the new sim, but they're actually listening to your feedback and are integrating new sounds, they are reworking the models, especially the cabin, and they're adding new animations to the aircraft as well. Which means that it's not going to be a free update, but it will come at a small cost in order to justify the development time that is rather significant for an update like that spent on the product. Now, on top of that, the Pmdg DC6 is still in the holding line, as Pmdg are waiting to see if a needed fix for the LOD issues is going to be included in the Sim Update 3, and they keep pressing the issue with Asobo, but for the time being they need to wait for that LOD fix in order to get the aircraft into the new sim. Now with that, let's quickly talk about the 747. With the wind down of the 777 development cycle, more resources have been dedicated to the 747 update, and they are increasing the speed of the development measurably. As you guys will remember, both the 747-100 and the 747-400 are in active development, and since both are developed at the same time, it is not quite clear yet which of the two is going to release first. Basically, the one that is going to near the end of the development and that's going to get into a release-ready state first is going to be the one that's going to be released first. This is quite an interesting lesson in terms of aircraft design work for us flight simmers, by the way. Now, you might ask, how can a 747-100 and a 400, which look totally different in the cockpit, be developed at the very same time? And it just goes to show that many of the systems in the 400 are still the same as the 100. You only have to develop those computers on top that are actually controlling them in the 400. So the system architecture in the background is still very similar. You only have to add those computers that are actually controlling them, rather than a flight engineer doing all of that stuff manually. Now, I don't have any active insight into the 747 development at the moment, but I could probably imagine that they are coming up with some sort of a flight engineer for the 100, which would actually be able to do most of the work on the systems in a similar fashion that the computers do in the modern version. I mean, it would make sense, wouldn't it? But I'll leave that for you guys to discuss in the comments below. So, do you think that's a plausible theory, or do you think they're going to do something totally different? In any case, I think we can assume you pick the word, we can assume that the 747-100 will have a fully operable flight engineer station, hopefully with an automatic flight engineer, maybe in a similar way to what we saw in the DC-6, helping us to control the aircraft. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you found this one interesting. Now let me know if you like the 777-200LR in the comments below, and with that I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.